The positive is that we've got people in this government of national unity, which I call the non-radical fascist and separatist groupings, which we spoke about here. They have totally been separated. There is a negative, and we have to spell that negativity out. This is very clear that the radical, I call them the radical social nationalistic, communistic dark cloud that lies within the EFF, MK, and cohorts are now.
So we all know that South Africa is currently undergoing a seismic political shift with a consolidation of the right of center and what seems to be an utmost exclusion of the radical left from the government of national unity. But in this video, Neil de Beer is actually warning about a consequence of this exclusion and what South Africans might need to beware with what's going on right now with the government of national unity. Let's listen to what Neil de Beer has to say about this, and I'll be back with an analysis on the political shift that is currently underway in South Africa.
So there are definitely now pros and cons to this government of national unity. The pro is that it's only obvious that when the DA and the rest of the entity that will form the GNO, specifically the IFP, it did create a bit of an upswing, may I call it a positive green tick to the world markets. I mean, this is Biznews. So the influence of the establishment of that word government of national unity has had an upswing on the market, a kind of stabilizer within the rand dollar situation for business. I saw a breath. I must tell you, it wasn't a sigh. It was a breath of, wow, okay, this is a bold step. The positive is that we've got people in this government of national unity, which I call the non-radical fascist and separatist groupings, which we spoke about here. They have totally been separated. So what you've got is a moderate, may I call it, leftist liberal entity that is now sitting and going, okay, let's get around this fire, let's dig in, and let's create one humongous good braai and entity. But like any braai, as we know, as it fades into the later of the night, things become a little bit unstable. This is no different. But the positive side right now is that we've got direction. There is a negative, and we have to spell that negativity out. This is very clear that the radical, I call them the radical social nationalistic, communistic dark cloud that lies within the EFF, MK, and cohorts are now totally separated, standing on the right hand and watching on the left hand and wanting to say, we are not going to accept this. So, Chris, the hope at this moment, listening to the talks, is that this government of national unity will address factionalism. In other words, that the followers of the ANC, predominantly coming from one segment, one facet, will have the IFP leader, Schlabisa, play a very critical role within the leadership of this government of national unity. Chris, I worked with this gentleman in the multi-party charter for a year. He's not a politician. Schlabisa is a statesman. There's a big difference. And if I had a vote, I would have voted Schlabisa, Honorable Schlabisa. And funny enough, in the multi-party charter, he was the only one of all the leaders that was addressed as honorable. They continued calling him honorable. This is something that is huge. So hopefully he will play a vice president or a deputy vice president or a critical role because he is a stabilizer, but it will bring, can I call it, the separatist entities within the Zulu faction, the KwaZulu-Natal faction. I'm glad the IFP won there. And he will bring as a leader stabilization to that. And undoubtedly, now I'm going to say it, and now the lightning's going to strike. I have confidence in John Steenhuisen. Put everything aside. We've got to sometimes go back and talk about person, because our politics is very much framed on personality. Take DA away, take everything away. I have also had the privilege and pleasure to work with him. Directly, no lying. And I am saying that if it is Cyril, which we knew would come, but if we have a John Steenhuisen and we have a Schlabisa, I'm talking people here, not party, I've got a positive attitude. The negative is that you're going to get people within this GNU, you're going to have people in the ANC that are actually not on board, and that they're going to do everything that they can, be it in the legislature, be it in parliament, be it in politics or in public, to derail this government of national unity. And that is the pro and the con that we've got, and we cannot allow it, because a collapse, and we've got to talk about that now, is the worst thing that this republic can ever see in its future.
Yeah, brilliant observation. What do you guys think? Neil de Beer, he's usually on point, and I like the fact that he uses these allegories, or what I like to call metaphors, in describing what's going on, in economics, in business, in the world systems, and all that. And he actually has spoken about, how life, seems to be like one building concrete in the forest. In the elongated video here, he speaks about how, if you want to know what a municipality in South Africa that works properly, look between the slabs. And, if there are slabs with grass growing in between them, you know that there's something going wrong in that municipality. And that's kind of like an allegory of life that, within the political sphere at the moment, there are those now that are trying to build with concrete in the forest, in the likes of this government of national unity led by the ANC, the Patriotic Alliance, the Democratic Alliance, and the Inkatha Freedom Party. And he tries to refer to the grass, the retrogressive force, which that's how he describes the leftist radicals, as a retrogressive force that seems to want to stop, or probably continuously infuse more force, as in from the force of the forest, to destroy what is being built by those who are trying to build by concrete. So these are kind of like Neil de Beer's metaphors in trying to describe the political shifts going on in South Africa now, where the radical left, with the likes of MK and EFF, and I think UDM, the United Democratic Movement, led by Bantu Holomisa, actually are trying to form now what would be a really semi-official opposition, or probably an official opposition within the parliament, and taking it up, trying to really oppose most of the policies by the government of national unity. And we're really hoping and praying that, South Africa will find its feet, in the light of that opposition. And hopefully both sides can come to agreement in development planning policies and all that, to really help South Africa rise out of the, numerous, like it's been described, turmoil that South Africa is going through at the moment. But anyway, for this video, I found a really interesting article on Africa Center for Strategic Studies, by Paul Nantulia. And he's trying to really analyze, the political landscape and the shift that's actually going on right now in South Africa. Really brilliant article. And we'll be doing this analysis as we try to understand where South Africa is at the moment. So he begins by saying that South Africa's ruling African National Congress, ANC, has lost its parliamentary majority for the first time in 30 years, and this we know, in a pivotal election that has reconfigured the country's political architecture. Embarking into uncharted territory for the still young democracy, President Cyril Ramaphosa has said the ANC will seek to form a government of national unity, and that we know that, the ANC now has agreed with the IFP, the PA, and the DA to really form this government of national unity. He speaks about how coalition scenarios are likely to revolve around the big four parties, and the ANC garnered 40.2% of the votes. The DA gathered 21.8% of the votes. The MK party was 14.6%, although the MK party has decided, that it wouldn't take part in the government of national unity, while the EFF 9.5%. So these are still the big four, in South Africa. So it speaks about that with each party advocating distinctly different policies and ideologies, the composition of the new government will directly shape South Africa's trajectory. For a government of national unity to be stable and deliver for citizens, it will require compromises and interparty confidence building along the lines of Nelson Mandela's government of national unity, which comprised all of the ANC's political rivals, including the National Party, following the first competitive multi-party elections in 1994. Now, it says not to be overlooked in the scrutiny of the outcome was the even-handed and transparent process in which the hard-fought election was conducted. And I will really agree that, South Africa's democracy has really come far and it's really mature. I really respected the way in which the whole process of, the elections, the declaration of the results, the president's statement speech, the convening by Justice Zondo and the swearing in at the parliament and the appointment of the Speaker of the House and the Assistant Speaker was just masterful. I really take my hat off for South Africa in that regard. So it speaks about how all parties were able to campaign freely, get their messages out to voters in person and via media platforms, and maintain ongoing access to the Independent Electoral Commission, the IEC. Save for some technical glitches anyway, the IEC was publicly accessible via its online platforms. It also says that, microphones and cameras were installed in the Results Operating Center, ROC, beaming live images of party agents, media, and observers interacting freely. I think much of Africa should really learn from South Africa's last elections and, how the IEC conducted itself. So it speaks about how just under 60% of eligible voters cast their ballots, with youth voters particularly engaged. According to the IEC, voters between the ages 20 and 29 constituted up to 77% of new registrations. So we had a lot of young votes, youth votes this time. And remember, this explains, like I shared in a video recently, this explains why, one of the major reasons why the ANC lost its 60% majority has always enjoyed, because there was a lot of youth now that were probably not necessarily ANC dominated, or probably they were ANC supporters, but now they were not associated with the ANC of 1994 and that struggle. And so right now they really feel disenfranchised, knowing fully well that yes, this ANC has been leading us, this ANC has been more at the forefront of what I like to term a dictatorial democracy since 1994, but our life isn't improving. Our situations and circumstances are improving. Our economic outlook is bleak. And so with a 77% youth vote, that's 77% of new registration coming from people, South Africans aged 20 to 29, we saw that radical seismic output, on the majority of the ANC, and we saw that fall from about 60% to about 40%. So it's really important to really understand how the political landscape also affects the votes coming in. So it says that the 77% of new registrations coming from people of ages 20 to 29 reflect a commitment by young people to have their voices heard at the ballot box. So it says that the big four parties, with the notable exception of the MK party, have publicly accepted the electoral results, setting the tone. President Ramaphosa framed the path forward. Our people have spoken, said Ramaphosa. Whether we like it or not, they have spoken. As the leaders of political parties and as all those who occupy positions of responsibility in society, we have heard the voices of the people and we must respect their wishes. According to Gaten Mackenzie, Ramaphosa's speech here was a really statesman speech. It was just off the hook. It was an excellent speech that really didn't, complain about the fall in the votes of the ANC, but it was really masterful and mature, according to Gaten Mackenzie. So here the article speaks about the fact that while while this election has been historic in South Africa, the results of South Africa's 2024 election follow a pattern from previous polls. The ANC's share of the vote had dropped steadily over the 5 previous elections from a high of 70% in 2004 to 57.5% in 2019. In 2021, local government polls, the ANC earned 45.6% of the vote, forcing it into coalition arrangements for the first time. So these polls in South Africa are really serious. We have to take them seriously and really understand, from them. It says disillusionment with the ANC has been growing for decades due to perceptions of endemic corruption and patronage, diversion of state resources, and certain anti-democratic tendencies stemming in part from fierce factional battles. We know that Rob Hersever actually called the ANC what he calls a kleptocracy in this regard. But anyway, the article goes on to say that South Africa also has among the world's highest reported unemployment rates, which reached 33% in 2023, contributing to its alarming crime rate. Youth unemployment has ballooned to over 50%. It's crazy. Youth unemployment 50% in South Africa. That's a lot. But anyway, it says that South Africa has also been gripped by debilitating power outages, reporting a consequence of systemic graft and mismanagement at the power utility Eskom, and outright sabotage by senior officials for factional political purposes. The woes facing Africa's oldest liberation movement, which celebrated its 113th anniversary in 2024, are captured in 6 volumes of the 76,206-page final report of the Independent Judicial Inquiry into State Capture, which conducted 430 public hearings and reviewed 161,070 transcripts of testimony over 2 years. And on this channel, we'll be doing a lot of the analysis of this report by the Independent Judicial Inquiry into State Capture. So we really understand how far South Africa went with this whole issue with state capture. So it says that the findings of the Judicial Commission are grim. Top party and government leaders, including former President Zuma, colluded with private interests to pilfer state institutions for financial gain. It cost South Africa an estimated $26 billion between 2009 and 2018. Now, it says that the ANC's descent into such serious malpractice was too much to bear for many, including its top stalwarts. In August 2023, an exasperated Thabo Mbeki, Mandela's immediate senior successor as president, asked, "How am I going to ask people to vote for the ANC led by local criminals?" The ANC's poor electoral performance can also be attributed to debilitating internal splits that chipped away at its base over time. The first crack occurred in 2008 when senior Mbeki administration officials resigned to protest his removal as president after Zuma loyalists took control of the ANC. The new party created by Mbeki officials, the Congress of the People, which is COPE, which took its name from the 1959 Congress of the People that produced the renowned Freedom Charter, reduced the ANC vote to 65.9% in the 2009 polls. Expelled ANC Youth League leaders then formed the Economic Freedom Fighters, EFF, in 2013 to implement the Freedom Charter, which they felt the ANC had abandoned. This further sank the ANC vote to 62% in 2014 and 57% in 2019. So we see slowly that the ANC's, who argues about the ANC's DNA? There's a speaker anyway that argues that the ANC's DNA seems to have been changed, and that's why the likes of the EFF and the MK party have actually decided to leave the ANC to form platforms to pursue the original mandate of the Freedom Charter. So here it continues. It says further that this year, so the EFF leaving the ANC sank the ANC vote to 62% in 2014 and 57% in 2019. Now it says that year, the EFF's share of the vote jumped to 10%. So this is in 2019. It argues that the EFF's share of the vote jumped to 10%. And, Julius Malema has come out to really explain that why this happened. That, this 10% was attributed to the fact that a major portion of EFF supporters were originally, I think, supporters of Zulu nationalism and hidden or veiled members of the MK party. And so when the MK party erupted in the person of Jacob Zuma, that extra 1.8 or 9% that made up this 10% left the EFF and went to the MK party, now pushing the MK party to gaining up to 14% of the electorate in the 2024 elections. But anyway, it says that this support of the EFF also partly came from ANC's followers who wanted to punish the ruling party for cutting Zuma's term short and replacing him with Cyril Ramaphosa. So part of EFF support was also in a bid to punish the ANC for the premature end of Zuma's term in office. So it says that the ANC's worst internal split occurred in July 2021 after Zuma partisans instigated 2 weeks of deadly riots in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng provinces. Following Zuma's imprisonment for contempt of court, the ANC splinter faction that began to take root from those riots, which left over 300 dead and caused untold damage to public property, coalesced into the MK party. Born from the intense intra-ANC rivalry between Zuma loyalists and Ramaphosa supporters, the MK party has been distinctive for challenging the legitimacy of state institutions and South Africa's foundational democratic principles. The MK party took its name from Umkhonto we Sizwe, which means the spear of the nation, which was the ANC's former military wing. The MK party's militaristic tactics during the campaign have been unlike anything South Africa has previously seen. And, we see the likes of Herman Mashaba and other parties anyway, really speaking about how the MK party really shocked everyone with its short stay in the political landscape. Now, the article goes on to say that to appreciate the effect of this splintering of the ANC, the combined vote totals for the ANC, EFF, and MK party amounted to 63% of the vote. The ruling party would have finished at 55% had its vote not migrated to the MK party. Now, it says that the determination by those outside the ANC to dislodge it from its majority should also not be understated. A record 52 parties were on the national ballot compared to just 16 in 1994. The number of independent candidates on national and provincial ballots reached a historic high of 200, forcing the IEC to create a third ballot, which contributed to delays in tallying. The DA assembled 11 parties to contest as a bloc, which was the multi-party charter or the Munsha Pact, which collectively won 119 of the 400 seats in the parliament. All told, the effort to break the ANC's majority was unprecedented. Now, finally, it speaks about how fellow liberation movements and other entrenched ruling parties around Africa are closely watching these developments. Many have also been in power since winning independence, and like the ANC, they have been beset by mounting levels of discontent stemming from systemic corruption, impunity, entitlement to rule, and insensitivity to citizens' concerns. It is unclear what lessons they will draw from South Africa. Some are saying the ANC should have had a plan B when it sensed defeat, meaning rigging, switching off the internet, ring fencing the Electoral Commission, and pulling all the stops to dislodge, dislocate, intimidate, and neutralize rivals. This is how various ruling parties have kept themselves in power. That the ANC did not choose this route is a testament to its commitment to the democratic process and the resilience of South Africa's oversight institutions. So, really powerful article by this researcher from the Strategic Africa Center for Strategic Studies, and it really describes how the political landscape in South Africa is really shifting seismically, and what we could really expect from this new GNU national unity government is still bleak and shaky. But I'll be making a video next on Gaten Mackenzie explaining how probably South Africa might be in trouble with this GNU and what the prospects for the GNU are. But what do you guys think about Neil de Beer's speech in this video? Really powerful, interesting speech. Share your thoughts in the comments.